Hello, English 1A. This is the second video in a three-part series that is about making the evidence appear really persuasive when you have it in your research argument. This is all about getting it to look good on the page. This is the video that we're going to talk about anecdotal evidence. Okay, so this evidence, I really like it. It's about telling the stories of people that are impacted by the issues presented in an argument. These stories help the reader see the personal side of the issue, allowing them to better appreciate what's at stake and why the issue is so important. If you think of it this way, if you had a research argument that only provided evidence that was like statistics and research studies, it may get kind of impersonal and cold. So it's significant that like 10,000 people were impacted by something as noted in this research study. But that 10,000 is just going to be a number until you get a human face that is actually in your research argument. So the human side of the story, it makes numbers and other parts of your research argument really feel real if it's done well. So to get the persuasive factor into this evidence, the qualities that you want your evidence to have in this particular case is you want them to get a more concrete picture of the issue, and then you want to show the reader what it's like to be personally impacted by the issue. And the way that you do this is by getting them into the story. And the best way that I know to do that is to use a lot of sensory details. People want to see people doing things. They want to experience what their life is like. And we experience the world through our senses. So it's a really good idea to take advantage of that when you are trying to make the reader have an experience in this story. So I would recommend all kinds of sensory details, and especially concrete details, like things that you can pick up, touch, sense, those kinds of things. Try to stay away from abstractions. We're going to see an example of how this works. It's much better when you see an example. So here we have an example from a piece of journalism. This is from Bradley Penner's Street Spirit article, Clarence Galtney, the OG of Harrison Street. I think this was written in 2023. I did excerpt this, so there is definitely some stuff missing, but I wanted to make sure that we were just looking at the story that was told in this article. This is actually how the article begins, but as you can see by the ellipses, there is some stuff that's missing, and that was, the reporter stuff. So anyway, let's see how it's done. So Clarence O.G. Galtney, 65, spent the morning of November 6 bagging possessions and clearing the perimeter of his tent on Harrison Street, a process he says he's endured over 20 times within Berkeley city limits over the past 10 years. To ensure his possessions wouldn't be thrown away in the flurry and chaos of the sweep, Galtney methodically organized clothes, hygiene supplies, and cookware in stacks along the sidewalk. Things he didn't want or need were thrown into a pile for the city to remove in the morning. It's like every time I buy something, by the end of the week, they come and say, "You don't need this, you don't need that," Galtney said as he swept debris into the street. How do they know what a person needs and doesn't need? If I just bought this pot because I need this pot, how are you going to sit up and say, "I don't need this"? So this is obviously an article that's going to be about sweeps, encampment sweeps that are happening in Berkeley. But imagine if you told the story and you didn't have any people in it and no details about them. It would just be a bunch of numbers. This number of people had this number of things happening on this street on this day, and it's just, it depersonalizes it. So in order to make sure that your reader understands that there's, people that are being impacted, it's really important to tell a story when it is needed. All right, so this is a review. So for anecdotal evidence, the stories show what it is like to be a person or be in the place impacted by the issue that you're talking about in your research argument. And the effectiveness of this kind of evidence is based on providing a concise selection of concrete details about the people, places, and human experiences that are impacted by the issue. So this is one thing that I definitely want to say. If you start to have your evidence get really, really long, that's awesome because you are totally into writing the story. However, since this is a research argument essay, We really want to make sure that we're using it just to support the thesis statement. If you are into story writing, however, though, definitely go for like a fiction or a journalism class or a creative nonfiction class. Go with what you really like doing. But for the purposes of this essay, we got to make sure that we're having a reasonable sized piece of evidence so that the reader, when they are captured by your story, they don't get so captured and are there so long that they forget that they are there to hear your argument.